Welcome. This is the Portland Children's Levy Allocation Committee meeting. If you were expecting something else, you're in the wrong room. I'm Ted Wheeler, and I'm the mayor and the Allocation Committee chair, and I'd like to introduce the other committee members. We have Commissioner Jessica Vega-Peterson on my immediate left, and Felicia Tripp-Fulson, who's our county-appointed member, sitting down at the far end. We've got Mitch Horniker here, who's our business community representative and has been with us for a long time. We appreciate that. We have an opening for a city-appointed member, and we'd welcome anybody who's interested in potentially joining this august and highly entertaining group of individuals. You can go to the city website at portlandoregon.gov/civic/apply, where the application can be submitted. And that information, it says, is crawling on the screen. There it is, at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, it is.
So, of course, we have the PCL staff with us today. Lisa Pellegrino is here, Meg McElroy, Lisa Hansel, Mary Gay Broderick is here, John Coughlin and John Kelly are both with us. So let's begin by approving the minutes for the September 16th meeting. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor, vote aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Done. Next up is public comment. We have two times during the meeting when people can comment. The first is for Community Child Care Initiative, and the second, Quality Improvement, Training, and Technical Assistant for current grantees. But beforehand, as always, if there's something you want to comment on that is not on today's agenda, now's the time to do that. Does anybody wish to be heard? No. Okay. So before we get to our first item, John Coughlin's going to present a video highlighting Levy's mural project at Hacienda CDC. We saw a shorter version of this video at our last meeting, so take it away, John.
Yeah, so the last time we saw just a little short teaser video. It's featuring just one of the artists from the Ideal PDX. The artist collaborated with children from the Hacienda CDC's after-school program on a mural in Northeast Portland. And this time we'd like to show a slightly longer video that is that features some of the other artists, and it tells the story a little better. So,
like a wave, you know, depending on the shape. No more paint. There you go.
My name is William Hernandez. I'm from Peru and a visual artist, and also I am the co-director of Ideal. It's a Latino group. We collaborate together, and this is the first time that we just all together to make the mural. So from the beginning of this project, we knew that we were working with kids through Expresiones. It's an after-school program supported by Portland Children's Levy. So the kids came in the morning for a workshop, designed their, the nature, the flowers, and then came to the afternoon to work with the artists in the same place. So this is something unique because kids and part of this community were involved in these murals.
The kids that are painting these flowers below here, they have realized that they could do something with their lives, They can learn the skills, just like they learn how to paint, they can learn anything else, that would help them in the future to achieve their dreams. I think that's one of the most important things to me, that when the kids learn to visualize something, draw it, paint it, they're the same skills that you learn for a person to be successful in life.
Some kids may do abstract art. Some other kids, they may get more realistic. Their brush stroke, their tracing, and it's a part of how they can express themselves. And it's not about doing realistic paintings. It's about just realizing who they are.
As an immigrant myself, you can have many reasons to move to a different place. Particularly the population and the people that lives in this area come trying to find a better place to live and more opportunities for themselves and their families. We decided to try to work with a background of them and their cultures, slowly bring some dreams that is in the last part of the mural that might be the reason why they are in this country.
And, after this celebration day, everyone is going back to their studios and their work and their busy days, and then that will be here forever. And hopefully kids, can be proud of their work. So this is something, awesome.
Thanks, John.
Yep.
Thank you, John.
That was cool.
That was really cool.
I would give that an Academy Award.
Yes.
Nicely done. Next up, Lisa's going to come up and tell us about the potential $6.1 million in non-competitive funds for 2 projects we're going to be asked to vote on later in the meeting. She's going to provide us a little bit of background and tell us how this fits into the overall lending projections for 2023. There will, of course, be time for questions and discussions, and we'll get more details on both items. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Nice to have some.
Is it, I don't think so. Is the,
Better?
yeah, there you
Okay,
go.
good. All right, thanks. Nice to start with looking at kids and before we have to head into dry administrative territory. But here we go. I wanted to refresh everybody's memory because we went through this briefly at the last meeting, but we were mostly concentrating on dividing the resources between program areas last time, and I don't know how much attention folks paid. So to briefly take us back to where we were, when City Council referred the levy for renewal last time, they also adopted some additional rules on how to allocate funds. And those rules codified some things, practices that we had but hadn't been sort of written as rules before. So those rules require that you all allocate at least 90% of the available funds in a competitive grant process for multi-year grants, which you have done in the last meeting. That part has been accomplished. And then it allows up to 10% of available funds to be allocated in a non-competitive process for 3 specific purposes that are in the rules. The first is for special initiatives that cross program areas or might address more than one program area. The second is for quality improvement supports, training, technical assistance for funded programs. And the last is improving systems that affect children and the organizations that serve them. So at the last meeting, we reviewed all the projected revenues and that's based on the city economist's projection. He'll update those in the early winter. But based on what we have thus far and on our estimates around projected fund balance, and fund balance, as you will recall, sometimes comes because revenues are over what the economist projects, and we make our grants based on what he projects, typically. Also, sometimes grants don't spend out, and sometimes grants don't continue for various reasons. So that's what builds up fund balance. So between those 2 things, 2 sources of revenue, we are projecting to have about $81.1 million over the next 3 fiscal years in revenues. So at the last meeting, we recommended holding aside $7.75 million of those resources in the non-competitive category. So that's less than 10% of the total projected revenues for that period of time to allocate at another meeting. So here we are at this point again. So the committee at the last meeting, to refresh everyone's memory, made the decision to hold back $7.1 million in non-competitive and instead to put $650,000 of the resources that we had originally recommended be non-competitive, be that moved over to competitive in the foster care program area. So that's just refreshing everybody's memory and for those who were not there last time. So we're looking at a total of $7.1 million in that pot over that 3-year time that we're considering today. So we're going to bring, and Meg is going to do the bulk of the talking today, bring a proposal to allocate $5.1 million of that over 3 years to continue the community child care initiative, and she's going to provide you with a lot more information about what that is. And then I'll come back and tell you about, we'd like to set aside $1 million over 3 years to continue doing TA, quality improvement, training, those types of things, and give you a sense of where we have spent that money in the past and where we anticipate spending it in the future. So that is teeing up Meg to come tell you about CCI.
Thank you. And Meg, you're going to talk to us about the Community Child Care Initiative.
I am indeed.
All right, good. And this is something completely different. We have a panel that Meg's going to introduce in a moment. This is a program that's obviously vitally important to parents and to families in our community. And we appreciate everybody who's coming today to tell us a little bit more about it.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Meg.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Mayor. So I'm like Lisa said, I'm going to do the bulk of the talking about the Community Child Care Initiative to help remind you all what it is and what it's been doing for the past 4 years, and some background information about how it came to be. And then I'm going to review data on its progress to date, and also some results from a family survey and a child care provider survey for participating families and child care providers involved in the effort. And then review a little bit about another part of the child care initiative that is part of what the Levy funds, not just the subsidy work, but a special investment in family-based child care. And then we have Christine Waters, who's the Director of Child Care Resource and Referral of Multnomah County, and Deb Johnson, who is the coordinator of CCI under this grant, also staff at Child Care Resource and Referral of Multnomah County, here to talk with us. We had a child care provider who was planning to come today, but as Melody Morris and her husband David, who operate an in-home child care called Daddy Daycare, but unfortunately one of the staff who was going to cover Melody's time called in sick, and so in order to be compliant with state regulations to be there caring for children and keeping them safe and healthy, she is not able to join us today. And unfortunately, it was really hard to find childcare providers and families who could be available at this time of the day to come and talk to you. So we hope that the information that we will share can speak to their voices and their experiences in this project.
Sounds good. Thanks,
All
Matt.
right, yep. All right. So the Community Child Care Initiative, as Lisa said, is one of those special initiatives under the levies authorizing the act that governs the levy that covers multiple program areas. It serves young children and children up to the age of 12. So we see it as an investment in both after school and early childhood. And the purpose of the Community Child Care Initiative is to assure child care is affordable and of high quality, particularly for working families with low incomes in our community. So it supports child care subsidies for working families with incomes at 200% of the federal poverty level or less. And it helps assure that families pay no more than 10% of their income toward child care. And that bar is set because it's the sort of federal and national research definition on what is affordable child care. Those of us paying more than 10% toward child care are having unaffordable child care. National research suggests that families who are low-income working families pay far more than 10% of their income toward child care. So this effort is in hopes of trying to help them have affordable child care as well as high-quality child care. The Child Care Initiative, funded by PCL, helps augment the state's child care subsidy, employment-related daycare. And like I said, it helps families up to 200% of the federal poverty level. The state's child care subsidy program ends at 185%. So Portland Children's Levy is investing in sort of an extra step for families. In addition, participating child care providers in the Community Child Care Initiative have to be involved with the state's quality effort. It's a quality rating and improvement system called SPARK. It is under a bit of redesign by the state right now, but it is still something that locally and across the state is being used to help child care providers set goals and make improvements in standards around child care quality and small business practices. And then finally, this entire effort is administered locally by Child Care Resource and Referral of Multnomah County, which is based at Mount Hood Community College. The Child Care Resource and Referral is a state-funded entity that provides training and technical assistance and professional development to child care providers, helps them navigate licensing and child care policy regulations, and assists them in navigating how to be compliant with state employment-related daycare subsidy program. Portland Children's Levy first started the Community Child Care Initiative back in 2007. It was the result of the levy generating higher than projected revenues. So at that time, staff suggested that the levy expand Head Start locally, and the allocation committee at the time said, are you sure that's the best thing, and should we maybe form a task force to really look at the most opportune way to support families with very young children. And the result of that task force investigation was that, I shouldn't say investigation, but sort of their convening and their information gathering was that we should instead invest in a child care quality and affordability initiative that didn't just serve young children, but also supported working families with children in their aftercare and summer care needs. That 5-year initiative was evaluated professionally by an external evaluator, Dr. Shannon Lipscomb of Dynamic Research and Evaluation. And in her evaluation, she found that the child care initiative had increased quality and stability of care for the families involved, that providers who were involved took the money that they received through the quality efforts and reinvested them in making progress on quality goals. So unfortunately, the Levy had to decrease and remove its funding from CCI between about 2012 and 2015 because at that time the recession and the decline in Levy revenues meant that it was unable to continue the project, and it had to reduce substantially other grants as well. When Levy revenues began to bounce back again, this body voted to reauthorize investment in CCI and started it again at $2 million over 4 years to serve 100 children a year. A couple years later, as revenues continued to climb and needs continued to be great, this board decided to invest another $1 million to serve an additional 100 children a year through 2020. And it also added supplementing funding for the state's focused child care network investments. The focused child care networks are culturally specific family child care providers who are trying to navigate that quality improvement system, SPARK, that the state has. And Portland Children's Levy's specific interest was in helping launch a Somali network of child care providers, which had never been done locally in our community. So currently, the CCI receives about $1.6 million in Levy funding to serve over 300 children annually in subsidized care, plus a small portion to 4 child care networks, an African American network, Latino network, and 2 Eastern European Slavic networks, and then solely funds the Somali network. So next, now that I've given you some background, we'll go into some of the data on the progress and results of CCI, and this is a bit more, I think, compelling and interesting than the background piece that I just had to review. These data are from 2 sources, progress reports that Child Care Resource and Referral Multnomah County submits to us on a semi-annual and annual basis, and then also we'll get to some results from family surveys and provider surveys. So over the past 4 years, CCI has exceeded the number of children it anticipated serving by over 30%. We are now, like I said, serving over 300 children annually. The majority of children served identify as a child of color, and about 1 in 5 of them are from homes where the primary language spoken is other than English. As you can see in the graph on the slide, of the total children served, about 22% identify as Latino, about 15% as African American, 12% as multiracial, less than 1% as Asian, less than 1% as African immigrant, about 2% as American Indian, Alaska Native, about 30% as white, and then we're missing information from about 18% of those served. So when I get to the end of this presentation, I'll talk a little bit more about sort of that's an area for improvement. Over half of the children served reside in East Portland, and as I said earlier, we're serving children in this program from infancy through age 12, and about 43% of them are 3 to 5-year-olds. The child care providers participating in CCI subsidy have to meet certain set of criteria in order to receive caring for the families who receive the subsidy dollars. And again, that's in order to assure that families are accessing higher quality care in our community. So like I said earlier, they have to be involved in the state's quality system, the SPARK system. They have to be licensed, and they have to have general liability insurance. And among the providers who are participating in CCI, they represent 5% of licensed providers in Multnomah County, just to give you a sense of scale here. However, they represent close to 20% of the providers who are participating in the Spark quality improvement effort. Among the 55 childcare providers participating in Spark, participating in CCI, 11 of them were previously involved in the childcare provider network. So they're folks that took the 2 years to be involved in that cohort of improvement, have achieved those improvement goals, and then have gone on to become involved in this effort to serve children with childcare subsidies. Over 20 providers involved in CCI have a star rating through the Spark system. And about 30% of the children receiving subsidies in CCI are involved with care in one of those star-rated providers. And then this map just gives you a sense of location for the participating providers in CCI. And as you can see, they are concentrated in North Portland and then also out in East Portland. So this suggests we're reaching well the families we'd like to be reaching. You'll also notice a couple of them are outside of city boundaries. The obligation for us is that the children served through CCI are residents of the city of Portland, so they can attend care in a location that may not be exactly in the city. These figures help you understand a little bit better how CCI affects a family's finances. As I noted earlier, the design of the program is that families will contribute no more than 10% of their income toward their child care costs. The state employment-related daycare program contributes up to about 75% of the market rate of child care. So as you can imagine, where between that and what the actual cost of child care is quite a gap. And if a parent isn't involved with CCI, they're expected to cover the rest of that. But through the support of this initiative, we help keep parents paying no more than 10% of their income toward child care. And for those families who are at income brackets up to 200% of the federal poverty level, we're contributing the majority toward their costs of child care to keep it at 10%. So these median figures are 4-year averages while we've been funding this program to help you get a sense of the median income for families receiving the CCI benefit is around $2,100 a month. The median cost of child care is around $1,100 a month. The subsidy provided through the state monthly median is about $630, and then the CCI subsidy contributed by PCL is around $373 a month. So we at the Levy decided that we wanted to use some of the questions from the previous external evaluation to check in and see how families are experiencing this version of CCI, and we wanted to do the same thing with providers. So through SurveyMonkey, we took a couple of the questions that the external evaluator used in the previous 5-year CCI, adapted them with input from child care resource and referral staff, and then we sent that survey out online in English and in Spanish to participating families. We did a similar survey with providers. They were simple questions. There were 9 of them. Some were Likert scale, some were open-ended. Of the families that we sent them to, 54% responded. And what their results show, and you all have a pretty long report for a more technical detail in your packets, is that families reported improved family finances while they were participating in CCI. They had increased access to higher quality care while they were participating, and in general, they had exceedingly high satisfaction. There were several wonderful reflections that families shared in the report. I obviously cannot go through all of them with you, but I picked out a few highlights today, so I'm going to go ahead and read them. One parent said, "It allowed me to not have to fret over how to scrap together my co-payment and gave me some reassurance in knowing that my child would receive a higher level of care." Another parent said, "My DHS copay is way too high for me to pay on my own. CCI made it possible for me to afford childcare and work at the same time." And as I said, we also surveyed providers using those same, using questions adapted from that previous external evaluation. 58% of the providers involved responded. What we heard from them, again, was incredibly high satisfaction with their childcare business income while they've been participating in in CCI. They have used the income from participating toward increased investments in their quality. They have hired new staff. They have increased staff wages. They have purchased materials and supplies and equipment to improve quality of their care. They also said that being involved in CCI has substantially increased the number of families with low incomes that they serve, and even especially with families who are on ERDC, that they've been more willing to serve families who are receiving that state subsidy, and that it has moderately increased the number of infants and toddlers that they serve. So they've generally also had a very high satisfaction with their experience. And again, a couple of quotes that they shared. I've been able to purchase some new supplies and furniture for my childcare. I've been able to hire a new staff, and I'm currently interviewing to increase staff. I've been able to pay my taxes for 2018 and have been paying my quarterly taxes on time. Another provider said, for us, it isn't extra income. It just helps families cover the difference in tuition if they qualify for ERDC or not, so they don't have huge debt. So I thought these quotes were pretty compelling because even though they're experiencing their involvement in the program from sort of two different sides, the one is really able to speak to how this benefit helps families. So that kind of covered the subsidy portion of what the Community Child Care Initiative has been supporting. As I noted earlier, in 2017, this board agreed to provide additional funding to CCI in part to support focused child care networks. So there are 5 focused child care networks at Child Care Resource and Referral. They are a 2-year cohort of 12 to 15 child care providers from culturally specific communities who have a coach. They meet monthly, they focus on business practices, they get professional development and training, they set their own quality goals based on the state Spark effort, and they make progress toward that. 4 of those networks started in 2014, and Levy funding helps support a small portion of what they have been doing. Levy funding entirely helped launch a new child care network focused exclusively on Somali child care providers. And just to cover a couple of highlights, that network really got up and running in 2018. They have 16 providers involved. They've collectively completed 199 training hours. 5 of them achieved licensure this year, which is a pretty big accomplishment. Their coach is there supporting them during licensing visits, helping them navigate paperwork, understanding the regulations and why they're necessary, and building relationships with the licensing staff. 10 of those child care providers attended for the first time the State Oregon Association for the Education of Young Children conference, and their network coordinator offered 2 workshops specifically for Somali providers in Somali around child care quality practices, and she also provided translation and interpretation for the keynote, which was from the early learning director, Miriam Calderon. So it was really a way to help those providers connect with the broader early learning professional community. And one quote that was shared in sort of a progress report about how that network was doing was specifically talking about licensure. As more providers become licensed, others are encouraged and want to become licensed now that they see it's possible. So it's just exciting to think of the ripple effect in that network group. So just to wrap up, I think between progress reports and the survey data, what we see is that CCI is reaching a diverse community of children and families and achieving positive results. Kids have high quality, stable care over time. Families are having reduced financial stress and increased financial support for their other financial obligations. They have more access to high quality care for their children, and they're satisfied with their experience in CCI. Similarly, child care providers reported high satisfaction with their experience, and they're using their income toward increasing and maintaining their quality. A couple areas for improvement, as we noted earlier, some of the demographic data collection on who we're serving wasn't as complete as we'd like to see, so we'll be trying to figure out how to problem solve that with R&R staff going forward. And then parents and child care providers each in the surveys had some ideas for quality improvement going forward. For example, some providers indicated that their involvement in CCI hasn't changed their ability to serve children with disabilities. A couple of parents chimed in that as foster parents, they would like reconsideration of how the income limits are sort of set for eligibility for CCI, because it might change their ability to better support their children and foster children and access childcare. So just some additional places for ongoing work. So with that, I'm happy to take questions, or I can invite our two guests to come and talk to you, and collectively, the three of us can answer your questions. Do you have a preference?
Why don't we go ahead and hear the testimony, and
All right,
I'm
great.
sure that'll prompt some questions and discussion.
Sounds good.
Great, thanks.
Deb and Christine, come on up.
Hello. Welcome. You wouldn't mind just stating your names again for the record, that'd be helpful. Thanks.
I'm Deb Johnson. I'm the coordinator of the CCI program.
Thanks, Deb.
Hi, and I'm Christine Waters, the Director of Child Care Resource and Referral.
Thanks, Christine.
Okay, thank you for inviting us down today and sharing a little bit about the program. As Meg went through, I think one of the most compelling things about this program is it was one of the very first times that we holistically looked at continuity of care for children. We really spent some time thinking about how to set that up, and that it's not simply just providing more money. So it's a matter of supporting providers, so allowing a program to have their full rate and run a childcare business, as well as supporting parents to pay a percentage of their income versus a co-payment that is run through a funding formula. So as incomes are lower or higher, that percentage really allows that to skew in a more reasonable manner. Aside from the holistic view, I think something else that has really allowed us to do is develop deeper relationship with ERDC. Locally, we have wonderful contacts. It's been a maintained relationship. DHS caseworkers remains a pretty high volume of referrals for the program. So often, caseworkers know when a family can't quite afford their co-payment, and this is kind of an avenue that they're able to support their families, and they send them over and say, hey, do they qualify? Can we give them a little bit extra? So Deb is going to speak a little more to that and to the real stories that she's hearing on the phone from parents every day. The long-term relationship we're able to build with programs through this, and those quality improvements have been very important from a business perspective. Again, going back to the idea that in order for children to maintain in care, we have to have providers that can remain in business. Those long-term relationships have helped us set goals, and as Meg mentioned about the Spark revisions at the state level, it's allowed us to instill a sense of continuous quality improvement in programs. So reminding programs every year we need to set goals, every couple of months we need to do check-ins, we need to think about how we're doing, how our families are experiencing our programs, and we've been able to do that. Additionally, I would say CCI has also helped us leverage funds. Very recently, Baby Promise rolled out from the state, and because we already were set, we know how to subcontract with providers, and then CCI allowed us to have a very nice transition plan. So Baby Promise is a state initiative with infant toddler contracted slots. We were awarded 74 slots in Multnomah County, and our transition plan is very simple. When they age out of Baby Promise, if they can't already go into another program, they can then come into CCI. So families experiencing childcare at no cost, and then they're able to graduate kind of up to the 10% cost instead of having to go from no cost to paying the full rate. So that was an advantage to us. The design of the CCI has also influenced the design of Baby Promise in the sense of how you contract with providers, how you work with insurance, what kind of insurances are appropriate for family child care, and that's an ongoing process as the pilot rolls out. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Thanks, Christine. Appreciate it.
Hi, I'm the person that parents call on the phone when they need help. And the stories are incredible, and there's often tears or ranting because that unexpected hit of how much childcare is going to cost is just, I know what that feels like to have an unexpected financial hit. That's like, how am I going to do this? So we get families referred by DHS caseworkers, by ERDC caseworkers, 211, other families, and friends recommend it. Most of our families, most of the programs that we get on board are because a family is at a child care provider that they're happy with, and they've been with and they're comfortable with and have a relationship with, but they find out that their copay is going to go up $100, or they got a new job and their copay is going to go up several $100s. So that's when we get the call, and we want families to be able to stay in their own communities and with people that they have a relationship with already. So if the program is eligible, we can get them on board, and that's how we've onboarded quite a few of our programs, is by parent interest. I did just a reality check for myself about how much childcare costs. I don't have any children. I've never had to pay for it. But if a person, a mom or a dad, single parent with 2 children making $4,000 a month does not qualify for any benefits whatsoever from the state. If they found a childcare program for their toddler and their preschooler, the cost would be $1,000 for the preschooler and $1,440 for the toddler. And if the rent's $1,200, that leaves them with $660 a month for everything else when they don't qualify for food stamps or health care or any of those other things. So the reality for our families is a family of 2 making $2,600 a month would have an ERDC copay of $581, and that's gross. So they're taking home much less than that. With CCI, their copay would be $260, and that's making the future minimum wage of $15, and we have a lot of people at that level. A lot of our families make $12.50 an hour, one parent, so that comes to $2,080 a month, and with ERDC, their copay would be $387, and with CCI, it's $208. Families are faced with not being able to accept a job sometimes. They find a job, they work so hard to get a job, they're so excited to have a job, but then they hear what their copay is going to be, and they call me on the phone like, I can't take this job because I can't afford the copay. I haven't been working, how am I going to even pay my rent this month, let alone a child care copay? So they're so relieved to find out that we're going to be able to help them and reduce that copay, sometimes pretty significantly. And I frequently hear about the cost of rent, that their copay just went up and their rent just went up, and how are they going to afford all of that at the same time? Some might get a small raise and their copay may go up by a couple of $100s, but what they're taking home doesn't go up by a couple of $100s, so they're even more in the hole. Let's see. When they call and are really upset, they're saying, I've tried so hard, and everything I do to get improved and get a raise, I feel like I'm just getting smacked down again because now I'm either further behind, even though I have more income. I may have lost some of my food stamps, and it's not a dollar per dollar amount that they're losing in benefits versus the increase in pay, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Early on, we had one of our first families, the child care provider was about ready to go and try to find some coats for the kids because they didn't have warm coats for the winter. And after the mom got the CCI help, the provider said the next month the kids came in new coats because the mom was able to afford coats for her kids. And one mom, we were only able to help her with about $40, reduce her copay by about $40. We paid the overage to the child care provider, but she said that $40, that's a tank of gas for me, and that's a big deal to not have to worry about that. One tank of gas. And one mom called and said, my child's going to learn now. She found a new child care provider from where she was. She wasn't unhappy where she was, but at the new place, she really felt like my child's going to learn now, and she was so thrilled about that. We had another mom who had been in recovery and had been looking for a job. Her child was in foster care, and she was at the point where she had the job. She found the child care, she got ERDC, but the copay was too high for her. So her caseworker, DHS, ERDC, the child care provider, and CCI all worked. She got her copay reduced so that she could afford child care. And that was the last piece before she got her child back. So she found out she got the child care, and the next week her child was back in her custody. I I think the CCI opens up more possibilities for families because they have more options for childcare. They don't have to settle for a program that just charges what ERDC will charge. They have more options to go to any program because they're only paying 10% and CCI will pay the overage, which is we call the amount that's higher than what ERDC will cover. If the child care program raises their rates, the families don't have to worry because CCI is going to cover that as well. And I think, a bit like you were talking about, it provides more stability for the children. They can stay in child care. If the parent loses their job, ERDC now allows them several months to stay in care while they're looking for a job at a zero copay. So we can keep them on CCI through that time so that when they have a job, we can look at their income again and then help them to be paying just 10% of their income. So kids aren't coming and going as much as they used to. If ERDC, children are allowed a certain number of hours on ERDC, and then ERDC will pay that rate based on if they're full-time or part-time hours. And if for some reason a child, because of illness or parent schedules, doesn't make the full-time hours, the provider can still collect for the full-time hours, which helps them to be more stable. And the child care programs, Meg was mentioning about hiring staff, this goes right down to the staff being able to have more dependable hours too, and their income to be more dependable. I think that's it.
Thanks, Deb.
Thank you for
Great.
the opportunity to, I get these calls every day, and I just feel so for the parents that are trying to work. They want to work, and the system makes it impossible for people to work sometimes.
Well, this is great testimony. And I appreciate it, Deb and Christine and Meg, you too. I was here for the early iteration of CCI.
Yes, you were.
And it's really gratifying just to see how it's helping people and to hear your stories about how it's helping working families gain access to good quality childcare. And it's nice for the parents to have that sense of confidence that their children are receiving quality and safe childcare as well. And I really appreciate the fact that we've worked hard through this program to work with various communities, diverse communities out there, and networks of community providers that are culturally specific. And that obviously is showing good results. So this is a really positive story for PCL, and I appreciate you being here today and sharing some of that testimony.
Thank you for the opportunity.
I can
to
tell you're passionate
come talk about our
it.
program.
Yeah, no, I can tell you're really passionate about it, and it shows in the results.
Thank you.
Do you all have questions for us before I tee you up with a recommendation and some decision point?
Is there a big wait list for the program? That was
Good.
my main question.
Good question, Felicia.
We don't have a wait list right now. We have had a wait list in the past. Right now, we don't. We are, carefully watching the budget as we get to the end of this grant cycle. So as people are calling at this point, I'm saying we need to find out what our budget is after each contract that we do to make sure that we have funds. We don't want to have to cut anybody off before June 30th. So we're keeping a careful eye on that. But right now, we're continuing to take applications and process them.
Do families need to work through a provider, or can they go directly to you?
I have parents call me directly, and that's how we get new providers, is that they're at a child care program, they haven't heard of CCI, and the child care provider maybe has never participated. They've all been invited. But maybe if they didn't have any families that had ERDC, they might not have participated before. But when they know that their families are going to get the help, they're usually willing to go through the application process.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a great program.
I just love hearing about this program. It's incredible, and I think especially the fact that CCI providers only 5% of the total number of licensed providers, but they're 18% of those participating in Spark, really speaks to the power of having some kind of additional subsidy or help. And I think that coaching and, navigation with the system to help providers really do those quality improvements that make a difference, and make a difference not just for the kids participating through CCI, but through all the kids that are at that program then. So this is exactly what we want to do. Thank you for all the work that you do on this. It's been great to work with you as we've talked about the Preschool for All stuff too. One of the questions that I had and that we've dealt with as we were looking at that is, for Multnomah County specifically, you're looking at, you go up to 200% of the federal poverty level. But we found that is just, there's so many families that are still left out there. And even though we may not have a waiting list right now, because childcare is so very expensive, looking at, self-sufficiency standards for families and how their actual, the cost of infant care, the cost of toddler care, the cost of preschool is a lot. Have you looked at that at all in terms of the need for this program?
Yeah, I think oftentimes I'll hear Deb on the phone and, someone could be $100 over 200%. And I think a lot of people in that bracket don't even reach out for help because there's just nothing there beyond the 200%. And to live in Portland, it's really challenging to live in Portland and be at that level. So I think a lot of people are outside of city limits that are also in that area. But yeah, that would be something we would love to look at.
Okay, thanks.
So, did anybody have any other questions? So, Meg, I show on my agenda, we have a vote. Specifically, what are you asking us to vote on?
Yes, asking you to vote to renew investment in the Community Child Care Initiative at $5.1 million over 3 years. So July 1, 2020 through June 30, 2023. Thank you.
Is that the same, is that current service level? Where did you
It's
get
current
that
service
number?
level plus COLA.
Plus COLA. Okay. Colleagues, any thoughts on that?
Yes and yes.
Yes.
All right. So it sounds like you're making a motion,
So moved.
And I'll second.
and we have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, vote aye. Aye. There you have it. It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thanks
Very
again.
much.
Thanks for your great work.
Guys,
Thank you.
great job.
All right, thanks, everyone. Next, according to my agenda, Lisa is coming back up, and she's going to talk about quality improvement training and technical assistance for grantees before we discuss and eventually vote on this initiative. Good afternoon.
Hi.
Hello again.
So I wanted to take you again a little history because I'm looking at committee members who were not here when we made the initial plan. I think Mitch might be the only one actually who was there then. So back in 2015, when there were additional revenues, the committee voted to put $500,000 into supporting quality improvement efforts that included training and TA, as well as other things aimed at essentially people doing continuous quality improvement, whatever the method might be. So in allocating those funds, we put a couple of plans before you, which you all approved, or which I should say some, not you exact people, but this body approved in late 2015 and early 2016. And those TA efforts have been continued for the remainder of the initiative over these last few years. The primary things that were invested in were in the youth program quality intervention, which is primarily aimed at after-school and some mentoring programs. It's a system that's adopted by the state of Washington as well as used throughout the country. We've got many programs that have used that now for 4 years running. So that's been continuing all along. In addition, we invested in training around reflective supervision, workplace wellness, and early childhood positive behavior supports. Those were primarily aimed at early childhood, child abuse prevention, and foster care programs that are serving young children. It's focused on culturally responsive and trauma-informed practice for program staff, and also on building supervisor skills for reflective supervision. We also invested in something called Project Impact and the Listening Lab, and so again, some folks here have heard people come in and tell stories about being involved in this. So Mitch may remember. I don't know if I think the rest of you are all too new for that, but that basically is a project that teaches qualitative evaluation approaches to program staff and supervisors to be able to assess their impact and to use specifically for planning program improvement. So it's kind of done in an iterative cycle, and they use their findings to create the program improvement plan for next year. Last, we've done some investment in ad hoc supports, things like supporting conference attendance or specific kinds of training that are only a one-time or a two-time in specific program areas or for specific groups of grantees based on their needs. So we surveyed needs, and we typically talk to them once a year about what needs are in that regard. So those are the things that have been supported thus far. We have come to you with approval for those, and that was in the past. What we're asking for today is to add one additional thing for 2020. So this is using the funds that were allocated in 2015, and we'd like to support another cohort of the community education worker training, which is a training that was developed using a system partner grant that you all funded, or that this body funded previously. I should stop using that word. So that the community education worker training was a program that was piloted and developed here locally, and it was modeled on the community health worker training and program in the state, and that focuses on teaching. This was particularly adapted to focus on early childhood supports, particularly around people who are going out to be home visitors. The training focuses on social determinants of early health and education, on elevating family voice, on developmental screening and home visiting skills, and on system change efforts. So it's also advocacy oriented. It's been recognized in the state system, so the state professional development system that you were hearing, quality improvement, is the Spark system. The ORO is I'm sure you know, Jessica, is the registry system that allows people to get training that allows them to advance up the professional development ladder. The community education worker training has been recognized as a training one can take to help advance up that ladder. So it was a successful pilot in that sense. Last, it specifically focuses on methods and practices developed by communities of color to serve children and families in their communities. So it's very much of a listening and modeling type of training. Was really successful the first time around. Meg can answer more questions about it. I won't attempt to do that if you have questions. But we would like to offer that as a training again this spring with the remaining funds in the quality improvement group of funds that you all approved back in 2015. So I will open that to questions first before we move on. Anybody want to know anything more about community education worker training?
That's great.
Okay. Go ahead.
Lisa, I know there's a myriad of things that go into turnover, but for these high-stress programs, one of our original thoughts was some of this effort and training, and this, especially the reflective supervision, might positively impact turnover. And I know we've seen numbers, and it's just too hard to attribute it. But when you talk to programs, are you hearing that at least at the point of the delivery, they're feeling like this is helping them retain and enhance the work lives of their staff?
Yeah, for the workplace wellness and reflective supervision support, absolutely. In fact, I know I can, and I bet Lisa Hansel can too, take excerpts out of reports that grantees have sent us with very specific ways in which they feel that training and that ongoing consultation on site has been instrumental in their team's ability to keep doing really hard work in stressful times. And supervisors in particular, recently, this past spring, those consultants convened supervisors of color for a reflective supervision cohort, and there were a couple of supervisors who in their discussion in their year-end reports to us said it was the first time that they had met together explicitly to talk about their experiences as supervisors and the dynamics of culture and race that show up for them in their work. So it's achieving many ends right now. And I would say even though the turnover thing is still, it's hard to attribute turnover to any one thing, as you said. And even though turnover is still a dynamic that our programs are experiencing, programs have also talked about how that support is helping them manage when they lose a really good teammate and how to keep morale going in the existing remaining staff and how to bring somebody new on board and kind of help them into the team dynamic. So it may not be the answer we had hoped for mitigating some of our turnover challenges, but I think it's addressing other issues that we didn't necessarily foresee when we put it in place.
Great. And are you going to ask us for a vote?
Just wanting to make sure there's no objections. We haven't really formally voted on these plans, but we've checked with you all to come to make sure there's no objection to funding, to adding that to our training list, if you will, of the things that
Okay,
we're offering next
Why
year.
don't I do this, since I forgot on the last item? Is there anybody who wants to testify on this item? Is there anybody who wants to testify on the last item who's hoping for a chance to talk about CCI
too
and
excited.
didn't get to? Good, I'm glad about that.
Okay.
I don't hear any objections.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, the last thing I'm just going to, for sake of making our numbers round, there was 7.1 million. You all have allocated 5.1 to CCI for the next 3 years. We are going to hold that million that you all, that we just discussed for training in TA and quality improvement efforts, and we will come to you later in the spring with what we're imagining for the next time. We may also have to add to that as we get new grantees with different needs. We may need to change that plan or add to it. So we'll come with sort of the 2020 and beyond plan later in the sort of early stage of 2020. But that does leave 1 million unallocated. I just wanted to make sure that you know we were recommending that you hold that as unallocated in the non-competitive category for this time period. For a number of reasons. One of which is to see what sorts of, if there's any other system-wide type of initiatives or initiatives that cross multiple program areas because they deal with different ages or different subject areas that you might want to consider. We've participated in various funding collaboratives with other funders in town as part of these system partner grants in the past, including sponsoring cohorts for the Center for Equity and Inclusion, working with a bunch of funders to try to support efforts to increase the number of trainings available for child care workers that are not in English or are specifically directed to particular cultural communities. So efforts like that that are multi-funder, we have joined. The other thing I think we might want to consider is when the small grants manager finally gets hired, you'll hear about that in a second, and when the program gets up and going, there may be additional training and TA needs potentially that might be even on the front end before there are grantees of that fund. I'm not sure, we don't know how that's going to go yet. So I do think it's wise to hold that for the time being and to be able to, after you do this competitive round, come back and take a look again at what some options might be, and we'll bring you some options for that. So that's my recommendation on that. You don't necessarily have to vote, but I just wanted to let you know that's why that's being held. For now, we'll come back and talk to you about it again in 6 to 8 months' time.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Okay. I think Lisa Hansel is gonna briefly go over a few updates, so people in the audience and you all know where we're at.
All right, very good. Good afternoon, Lisa. How are you today?
Good.
It's
How
good
are
to
you?
have. Good.
Just a few updates, just to let you know the work that's been in progress. First, regarding the competitive funding round, the requests for investments went out on September 25th as planned for all 6 program areas. Staff held 2 pre-proposal conferences in early October, had over 100 people attend those 2 conferences.
Wow.
Let's see, applications will be due on November 20th, and we've been using the new process for written. Any questions about the RFI are in writing. We receive those via email, and then responses go out to the person asking the question, and then a digest is published each week and also on our website, or it's gone through email and also on our website, showing all those questions and the responses so everyone has the same information. We also took questions at the 2 pre-proposal conferences, and the answers to, or the responses to those questions also were published as well. And then also related to the funding process, reviewer recruitment, we've been recruiting reviewers since July through social media, our website, our newsletter, email to our database, and also focused emails asking folks that we know to share the word with their networks and also ask them to consider being reviewers. To date, we have accepted 90 people into our reviewer pool. We're anticipating needing about that many reviewers. We won't know for sure until we get all the applications in. We're continuing to accept sign-up forms just to be able to best match reviewers with the applications that we do receive, and also in the event that some people may need to back out from being a reviewer if they signed up in July, say what? Then after we receive the applications after November 20th, we'll be matching those with the reviewers, working to get a balance of program area experience and knowledge, as well as experience and knowledge in equity, diversity, and inclusion. So matching up those teams, and then we will be training folks in early December for their work as reviewers. So that's an update on the review process as well as competitive funding. And then, as Lisa said, a small grants manager update. We are in the final phases of interviews. We've had 2 rounds of interviews so far. PCL staff and 3 community partners have been involved in those interviews. And then it's like this week we'll have final interviews with the 3 finalists, with an opportunity for all staff to be part of those interviews. And so as soon as those are done, we anticipate making an offer to the finalist.
Great.
What's going on?
So, questions or?
When do you think that person will be hired?
Well, it's probably partly going to depend on how much notice they feel they need to give to their current employer, and I'm not
Okay.
sure what that will look like.
Okay.
I'm hoping December.
Okay.
I was hoping November, but I know that might be unrealistic. But I'll cross my fingers.
Yeah. I was thinking getting through the city process.
Yes, it's like, yeah, I mean, and now we have a new onboarding system, which we're all trying to learn, so, yeah,
So things
Could take a
are
little time.
moving along on all fronts.
yeah, it's kind of the status.
All
I
right.
won't see you again until after the holidays, so.
Good.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
break.
Thanks for the update. We don't have any meeting scheduled
Not yet.
as of yet, but there'll be a lot of work behind the scenes, both on the RFI process, and it sounds like we'll have a new PCL staffer joining the team in the very near future, so we're all very excited about that opportunity as well. There will be a lot of work going on behind the scenes, obviously associated with both of these things, particularly the RFI. And when a date is selected, that will show up on the PCL website as well as the communications that are sent out. So stand by. We will be meeting again. And unless there's any other business, we stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all.
What's the timeline for getting the